beautiful, right? There's a saying in my belief system that there are those whose speech may dazzle you, and they call God to witness as to what they say, but what's in the hearts are far worse. People are crafty with language, and I think it's literally one of if and this is what I'm constantly trying to do. Look, I'm not the brightest person in the world, and I've missed out on a lot of years and that I can never get back. That's why I'm so adamant. I mean, literally, I got books everywhere, and I'm trying to read, but not just read for the sake of reading. I'm reading for the sake of being informed in order to be transformed and to make a difference. That's a total. There are some people that want knowledge. I want wisdom, because wisdom implies acting upon the knowledge you have to implement it to make a difference. We talked about taking risks, right? Being radical. I was reading something. I don't know if you've ever heard of this lady named Bell Hooks, right? And I don't want to be unjust to her because it's lengthy. I'm going to read what she says, because I think what we don't talk about is when we talk about radicalism, right? We think of like aggression. we think of things like that. And that's a part of it as well. But also nowadays, you know what's become so radical? Is just to have this ethic of love, like to love, to be able to love each other and recognize differences and look at differences as not always being wrong and right. Sometimes it's just different. And so I was reading Bell Hooks, and she said this, both on radicalism and both on love. She says, the culture of domination rely on the cultivation of fear as a way to ensure obedience. In our society, we make much of love and say little about fear. Yet we're all terribly afraid most of the time. As a culture, we're obsessed with the notion of safety. Yet we do not question why we live in a state of extreme anxiety and dread. Fear is the primary force upholding structures of domination. It promotes the desire for separation, the desire not to be known. When we are taught that safety lies always with sameness, then difference of any kind will appear as a threat. When we choose to love, we choose to move against fear, against alienation and separation. The choice to live is a choice to connect, to feel ourselves in the other. Fear of radical changes leads many citizens of the nation and others to betray their minds and hearts. Yet we are subjected to radical changes every day. These changes are usually imposed by the status quo. Example, revolutionary new technologies has led us to accept computers. Our willingness to embrace the unknown shows that we are all capable of confronting fear of radical change that we cope. Obviously, it is not in the interest of status quo to encourage us to confront our collective fear of love. Our overall cultural embrace of a love ethic would mean that we would all oppose much of the public policy that's condoned and supported today. When I ended up going to LSU, and I'm missing pieces here because I know we only have maybe 40 minutes or so, I was exposed. And having been exposed, because I could read well, I could spell well, but my comprehension skills were terrible. And the wake-up call came for me, not at that moment, it came for me a little later at LSU. But I remember being in this class before they were directing me to which classes I was going to take. I don't know why it was that way with me. And they had me reading something. And as I was reading it so fluently. You would have thought, if you wouldn't have asked me questions, if you were listening to the way I was reading, I was articulate, I was stopping at the periods, I was great. After I read, the person started asking me, what does this word mean? I said, I have no idea. What does this mean? I said, I don't know. And the more questions he asked me, I started feeling more humiliated. Until it got to the point, he says, well, what is the story telling you? I couldn't recall the story. They put me in a remedial reading class. So I'm breaking all of these records. I'm this person that's doing all these things, but I was suffering from an identity crisis. I didn't feel myself as smart until Dale Brown gave me the autobiography of Malcolm. And I began to read his book. and how his mind worked. And I'm so competitive, as I was saying to the sister earlier, that when I saw that, I knew that it was something that I didn't have. And I knew that I didn't want my life to end with just being known as a basketball player. Because you hear the stories coming up of the Muhammad Ali's, right? All of these stories of people who have taken a position and they were condemned for it, but now they're loved for it. But it wasn't that so much. It was the fact that, man, these people really risk their lives for something bigger than themselves. And these are the people that we end up loving so much, even though during their lifetime, they don't necessarily get that. They were condemned and ostracized. And so for me, that moment that I began to read about Malcolm, there was a shift in my brain and in my soul that I said, you know, this is what I'm looking for.